Herbolic V2. This is a super safe and effective natural anabolic. Not only is this product going to help you increase protein synthesis, which basically means muscle recovery and growth, it also may inhibit myostatin, which is a protein in your body that is known to inhibit muscle growth. This is a complete natural anabolic that works through multiple different pathways, has multiple trademarked ingredients. If you are a natural athlete looking for that edge, Herbolic V2 is what you need. Get yourself some.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Pro Physique Code. It's our normal crew today. We've got myself, Coach Christina, we've got Danica, we've got Steven. It's a good old day. How are you guys doing today?
Good old day.
Yes. That's what I have to say about the first week of December.
Hell yeah.
Where it's like, ready, go all the time, I feel like. So today we are talking about joy and seeking it, creating it.
Yeah, well, I think that everyone feels like this is, the messaging that's kind of delivered to us everywhere is this is supposed to be a joyous season. And I think sometimes it feels like pressure to actually experience that joy. So I guess the way that I wanted to take it was like, one, how do you define joy? And also realizing that everybody's perception of joy or how they experience joy might be different from others, and that's okay too. And also we can dive even deeper than that and say, if we have no idea how to experience joy, my name is Danica Johnson, and I'm the mindset coach here at Pro Physique, and you can reach out to me.
So how do you define joy for you? And then with your experience, like, how would you say you find that most people define it?
I personally, and we did this before where I didn't look up like the definition. We probably should have done that prior to, but
listen, we fly by the seat of our pants here.
I know.
You're getting the real
by definition, a feeling of great pleasure and happiness. So when I think of joy, I do feel a feeling of comfort and like I am uplifted. Like I just feel very comfortable. I feel very at peace in my body and in my mind. And there's typically like a smile on my face or a giggle that's happening, or there's just this lightheartedness that I feel. And that's how I would say I personally feel joy and how I would define joy as well. Other people have been like taking it to it. I've heard people say, well, joy for me is when I have everything right. Or joy for me is when I make no mistakes, or I'm succeeding in all places of my life, or joy for me is when I see my kids having fun, or I see my partner succeeding, or maybe it's someone else, like how they see someone else happy or successful, and then that brings them joy. But during this season, I feel like sometimes it can be very difficult to experience those states of calmness or pleasure or laughter, happiness, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes there's difficulty around this season because we're just in a busy, busy, busy time for many people. And I don't think that busy for me equates to joy. I think calm, like slow down, slow my roll, be more present, for me equates to joy.
So I think something that's important to I want to pick this out. It's like, if you're saying that joy for you is the I did everything perfect. So it's not that you did everything perfect, it's the absence of mistakes, right? It's that I have the things I want. So it's the absence of negative experience. I don't think joy is supposed to be based on the absence of negative things. Right. Joy is supposed to be something completely separate in and of itself. Like I feel joy even with everything going on because of this thing or because of this experience, this belief, this relationship, whatever it might be. So I do think that, there's a difference between that sense of relief that you get because, okay, nothing bad is looming. There's no shadow lurking around the corner. Like there's no stuff on my plate, per se. But I think joy, when I think of it, is something that's independent of that. Like I can still find joy even if the shit's hitting the fan.
Yeah, so something Danica said that jumped out to me for like how I would define it was how you said like you feel like lighter, or you like it's like that like kind of feeling for me. Like so I say like I'll talk to clients about like joyful movement and stuff. Like say they're on a vacation and they're asking me how much I want them to exercise or something like that. I'll be like, "Oh, I do not care if you go to the hotel gym unless it's going to be for like joyful movement while you're on your break. Like this is not something that like should be homework or that you feel like you are held to. I want it to be movement that's going to uplift you and help you feel good about it." And like for me, it's not necessarily the absence of stuff, but it's kind of like just being in a place where you do just feel like uplifted and like good, right? But I mean, if you break it down, going to like how Danica described it, if I'm going to feel that way, it's probably because I don't have a bunch of other things weighing down on me. And that is one of the things that, like with holidays and stuff, I'm not a huge fan of the big like involving a million people in my joy for the holidays. Like that does nothing for me. Or like having a bunch of parties and like a bunch of things I have to go to because that just overloads like my list. And then I feel like I have a million things to do. And now it's the opposite of joy. By the time I get there, I don't want to fucking be there. I want to go home. My bed was joyful. Like, and so it's tricky though. But I mean, like that's the whole point, right? Is that Steven doesn't want it to have to be the absence of something. And that works.
And I'm not saying that like I disagree. I don't like being around a ton of people or having a ton of crap going on during the holidays. That doesn't do a lot for me, but it also doesn't mean that even if I'm stressed out in those situations that I can't find little pieces of joy and things to like celebrate in that.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think it's one of those things that, I mean, I know at least for me in those situations that like that becomes like a thing you kind of work on and have to kind of protect too. Like if you know, especially this time of year, that that kind of stuff is going to get to you or maybe kind of tamp down the joy, working on making sure that we're prioritizing our peace and like our little circle of joy, even in those situations. And so, Danica, do you have like tips for people that like in those situations where maybe if they are defining it a lot by like needing to have less on their plate or like that kind of style of things, and maybe that's just not an option and they don't want to be bummed?
Yeah. Well, a lot of the times I feel like people already perceive an experience or like they set the tone for the feeling that they're going to be experiencing as they go into different places, right? So they already envision like, oh, okay, now I have to go to a gathering and I don't want to see so and so and they're going to be arguing, and like they can go on and create this whole entire elaborate story in their mind attached with like a negative feeling. So they kind of strip their ability and opportunity to even experience joy. And I'll say to them, like, say that none of that happens. Like say none of that happens at all. And what is something positive that could happen? That like this is a perfect time for this to happen. Where's the opportunity lie where you could experience joy or that lightheartedness or that laughter? And to find that for themselves and then like try to build that up as opposed to building up like I didn't have this tax done, or like not diving into all of the negative stuff so that you miss out the opportunity to even experience joy. And I find that the holidays happen like that often because it's having like trying to manifest something that like it doesn't have to happen. Like we're creating kind of problems in our minds, and the negative does outweigh the positives a lot, and it sits heavier on our heart and heavier on our mind, and we become weak in our ability to even filter it out sometimes and have a little slice of joy. So if you were to flip it and say, this is going to be an amazing thing, like lie to yourself, this is going to be amazing. This adventure is going to be awesome. I'm going to drive in the snow and it's going to be great because I have great tires and I'm not going to freak out. It's going to be awesome. And then we're going to go to Santa's little house and it's going to be fantastic. And everyone's going to be there and there will be no snotty children and no one will sneeze on me and it'll be fine. Like if you can create happiness and a funny little peaceful event, you're going to feel a certain way. And then you really do, like that feeling can come out through your body and you will experience it different as opposed to thinking, well, this is just negative. Like our thoughts truly do become our reality. So it's what you lead with into each event or each opportunity. If you're leading with negative, probably is going to be negative.
So at what point do you feel like that is no longer a benefit? Because for me, I think that say I put some idea in my head and it's not realistic and it's not something that's going to be actuality, right? Like you're probably going to get sneezed on by a kid, you know? There's going to be germs. There's a good chance you might get sick. So like for me, if I have unrealistic expectations, then it's going to be a more negative experience for me. Like I'm more negatively impacted if and when something happens. But I think if I have realistic expectations, say, okay, because I do think that there is this ability that we can work on and figure out of, okay, I'm going to create realistic expectations for myself and for the situation and what I think is probably going to happen, but I'm not going to get a lot of negative emotion tied into that. I'm not going to kind of like push those things subconsciously or even consciously into happening. Because I think, like, for me with the holidays, it's family. I have a lot of years of experience with my family, so I know what expectations are real and which ones aren't, you know? Um, so it's if I go in and I expect my family to be Jill's family, like I'm gonna have a bad time. You know, it's like the ski instructor from South Park. It's like you're gonna have a bad time. But if I can, take a step back and be like, okay, these are who they are. This is the expectation I need to have. So now my expectations of them are set appropriately. And now I can actually have a better chance of enjoying myself and enjoying those situations than I would have otherwise, because otherwise I'm just going to be disappointed or let down.
Yeah, having realistic expectations are good, but also I would say trying to have an understanding of the role that you play within those situations too, right? Because you have control over that. So if you and you could maybe want to change the way that your role is. So for instance, at my last gathering there, I know that most of it is like gloom and doom and like I can't vibe with gloom and doom. It doesn't really fill my cup at all. And I get caught up in conversations that happen to be really deep. And then I leave feeling like, oh my gosh, I think my soul is somewhere back there. Don't really know where I left it. And so instead of that, I decided I'm going to be like the uplifter that's like, all right, everybody go around. What are we grateful for? And there's no out. You, and took a role that was very different in the family dynamic. And then I was like, yeah, like I'm going to change the dynamics here because I have the power to do so. And I ended up changing the way that the energy in the room happened, right? So also looking at the role, are we passive? Are we enabling with any negative energy? Could we possibly change slightly if we wanted to like increase the positive mood? Do we even want to do that? But I think it is important to say, like, what role do I play in the situation that may bring me down too?
Boom.
Christina's got nothing.
No, I do. I have so much. And then, but the thing is, because I err on the side of just being like, let's just air it out. I feel like, Christina, bring it in. No, I love that because I'm definitely somebody who will sit and run through all of the possible scenarios except for the positive ones, because those ones are like, oh, but it's just going to feel so nice. It's just going to come at me. So if that surprises me, that would be cool. But some part of me is like, well, you know what we should do and what will make you feel safer is if we run through every possible shitty thing that could happen ahead of time, you'll be ready for it. But I mean, exactly like you're saying, like it does not serve me. It doesn't actually make me feel better walking into the situation because like maybe I have a fleeting moment because I'm petty enough to be like, ha, I was right. So and so's an asshole, you know, like, but
Yes.
does that feeling serve me next, especially if I have to continue to spend time with these people and like love them and like have that kind of stuff? No. And so for me, as I have like tried to work on that stuff, because I've realized that there have been people in my life for me that what brings them joy and the conversations that they like to have and the tone of them and the topics of them and stuff and like what our relationship then becomes based on. Like I have someone in my life where if I need to talk shit, I can call them and like they're gonna like the whole way, right? And like feed it, but there isn't a lot outside of that. Like if we don't have someone that we're like, or something that we're shitting on, there's not a lot else to chat about. And so for me,
She's your pigeon pal.
this isn't you though. We have so many other good things to talk
No,
about.
I know.
Like,
I
so
just I just like that she's your pigeon pal. You guys like to crap on things
there
together.
we go. Yes, I'll remember that. So, but for me, I had to take a step back from my pigeon pal and recently, like, had one of those conversations that started out good, quickly devolved into shit talking and stuff. And maybe in the moment, like, yeah, the conversations felt spirited. We were on the same side and all of that. But then as soon as it was done, kind of like how you said, Danica, you were like, where's my soul? Like, I felt greasy
Mm.
and it was just like, I don't feel like, even if it was good to reconnect and it was good to talk to that person when we haven't talked in a while, I didn't necessarily feel better for having had that conversation. And I mean, it might not be the healthiest thing, but for me, it's like I'm a very much like a cold turkey person where I'll just be like, okay, never mind, I don't want to. And like, and then take a step back. And I mean, I think it's very nuanced, like situation to situation. And I mean, being that it's a fitness podcast, we could probably flip all of this over to like our relationship with like those kinds of things and stuff. But for me, learning to set boundaries has actually been like the biggest thing when it comes to protecting joy and stuff like that. And one of the things I love about motherhood is that it brings a lot of pressure because we are like the thermostat for the room in a lot of situations where like if I'm having a shit day, my kids will definitely feel it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be in shit moods, but like they'll walk on eggshells, they want to know what's wrong, they're getting stressed out, like things like that. And so I have like this responsibility to try and not let things get me to that place, but it also makes it easier for me in those situations to be like, this is my brood and my people and like my world and the most important things for me. And so then I can kind of choose to shut out the noise of like everything else and just be like, I don't give a fuck about any of you as long as these people are happy, and kind of like narrow it down. And so I've learned over the year, instead of trying to just overextend and go to all the things and make everyone happy and like show up all done up in the matching outfits and like ready to go, I would rather not, so that I can enjoy my holiday the way that I want to, as opposed to sitting in a room feeling like, I mean, when you have toddlers and you have to go to other people's houses that aren't prepared for toddlers, there's no way to enjoy anything. Like, you're just running
I
around.
mean, wouldn't that kind of be just like being true to yourself at that point, though? Because when I think of like, okay, we're doing the fall photos and we're dressing up and we're doing the pumpkin patch and the orchards, I'm like, that's fake as shit. Like that's not real life. But for some people, like that's real life for them. Like that's part of their identity. It's things that really does bring them joy and stuff. Um, but not this guy. I think, a big part of that joy is also being authentic,
Right.
not necessarily just in like the way that you have your relationships, but in those boundaries, in the things that you say yes or no to. Um, because you can be authentic and still do something that's not your favorite, and go out and be involved. But man, like I hate it way worse if I'm trying to lie about it. Like if I'm trying to lie about who I am, yeah, I'm having a great time, everybody. Kill me.
Fine. Right. Yeah. Well, maybe knowing, I think too, knowing your joy, like what brings you joy or what fills your cup or what are the needs that you like to have met are really important too. And being, and not to shit on other people's joy, like,
Right.
but to say that's great for you. Like, I love that that brings you joy. So maybe it's appreciating that something can bring another person joy, and that's amazing, right? Because the last thing I would hope that good humans would want is for people to not experience joy, right? So just because it doesn't match your joy doesn't mean that it isn't joyful for another person. But then finding out what is joyful for you. Like I don't like the whole um decorating stuff. I don't like it. It doesn't bring me joy. But if I go to someone else's house and they do it, and I'm like, wow, this is awesome. Like, this is great. I'm so happy that it brought you joy and I get to experience it through the lens that you're experiencing it from. And that's fantastic. Even my husband has the greatest joy in the world for everything. And he's like, you just don't have joy for life. I'm like, I have joy for life. Like, I just don't laugh at everything. Like, it takes me a lot to laugh. And
Please
that's
introduce him to me.
oh
So
my
so
God.
that
We
You
can
have
level set his expectations if you'd like.
You need to, because he like laughs at everything. It could be like he like sends me reels. He's like, "Do you see that reel? Wasn't it hilarious?" And I'm like, I trying to find the humor, but I see your joy. I like your joy. And I think finding like what works for you is really important. And maybe asking questions too. Like there's been many times that I've said to people where I did not understand it. Like Christina, baking probably gives you joy.
I have an interesting relationship with one of
Okay.
my
Well,
hobbies.
it doesn't give me any joy at all. It gives me
Right.
a little bit of anxiety. And because I'm like, I'm gonna fuck this up. Like these are the realistic expectations. I will not do well. Realistically speaking, I won't do well at
Is
this
that
baking
why you don't like cake? Because you can't bake
because
one?
I don't know how to do it.
See, I'm just gonna find you a good recipe and send it to you.
But it probably gives you a small sense of fulfillment in some capacity.
The thing about it that brings me, it's funny because it comes back to like what how we had talked about joy like being easy and like things like that, or like the hope that it would be that way, because that's what I think about it is like joy should be like something, an easy feeling that comes at you. And like with baking, I love doing it, but it's the end product and getting to present it to somebody that I love. But being in the mix of it and having to do it is so stressful. Like my husband will find me like on the floor of the kitchen looking in the oven like it's so bad. And like he's like it's perfect. I'm like no, it's not perfect. And like so that'll kill me. But then when it is finally done and somebody eats it, then I'm like yay, like you did like it. And so I'll tell people like that's my love language. But then if you ever see me in the middle of trying to express my love language, just don't talk to me because I probably have headphones in so that I can't hear you.
does that mean that you're gonna bake us cupcakes and bring them to us next month when we're sort of kind of in town?
Wait, oh, you are going to be, yes. Now, yes.
You know what's cool? Oh, so side note, something that's bringing me joy. Um, so Sam and her husband are actually gonna fly out and go skiing with us a few days.
Ooh, fun.
Because we haven't seen them in a while. So like that's something that's
Are you going
like
to
that brought me
Breck?
joy.
Is that were you going to Breckenridge?
We're gonna be right there in the middle of Breck, Keystone, Beaver Creek, and Vale. So right in that area. So they're all fair game.
Okay, we have to like reconnect because my in-laws are in Keystone. So that's
Yeah.
like super easy. So
But
yay.
like,
See, that brings me joy.
yeah,
Easy conversations. Like that's when when Danica was talking about it, that was like the big word that like immediately came to my mind when thinking about joy is like easy and conversations like with the two of you bring me joy because even if we talk about things that are uncomfortable or I get pushed into something I don't want to talk about or like he's like, what do you mean? Which I survived that and everything was so great. But I know Steven's gonna challenge me, right? Like from the fucking get-go, I know he's not gonna let something slide and he's gonna call me out on some shit. I know it comes from a good place. And even that feels easier than it does with most people, right? Because I know it's coming from a good place. And so like the ease of things, I think is what's nice. But if we are trying to create that, then like Danica was saying, like you kind of have that responsibility to still kind of put in the legwork to create that ease, which I think for some people immediately can be like, it's already not easy. That's too many steps and I don't want to do it. And it can then be easier to just sit and wallow, right? And then that's where you have to shake it off and be like, I'm not going to do that bullshit anymore because that's not actually fun, even if it's easier.
Yeah, you could tie that in. I mean, if you wanted to tie even that into fitness, right? How many things are not as easy as for like it is in the very beginning, right? Tracking your meals, getting up earlier to do your workout or whatever it may be. There's like that resistance but there's typically some joy that comes when you are starting to see the progress you're making, or you're starting to realize, oh, it wasn't as hard as I thought. And that could be with conversations, it could be with tracking your food, it could be prepping your food, it could be with baking a cake. Like it typically, there is a sense of joy that's going to come from that, even if it's a little challenging or rough around the edges to start.
I think,
So,
oh, go ahead.
well, so I think also like with the fitness stuff, it's I think easier because you're typically in control of pretty much all of that, right? You're in control of what time you wake up. You're in control of whether or not you go. You can like I think with a lot of the other aspects of joy, and particularly the holidays and family and stuff, you're not like you can put the effort out. You can do what you can do, and you can take solace and joy or pride in trying to do the right thing or to make things go smoother for everybody. But at the end of the day, once other people are involved, like there is now some stuff out of your control. And so, am I the only non-anxiety guy? I feel like Danica doesn't like exude anxiety, but
I don't express anxiety. I was told like you have anxiety by someone we won't speak of, but do I?
Offline, I want to know more about that conversation.
totally.
I don't know if I am. Well, no, I'm definitely anxiety prone, but I also know that like I know how to cage it. Like, hey,
Right.
go
Right.
back in your cage.
So like I feel like that's something that with me being more like a B type personality and having less anxiety, it's easier for me to be like, okay, well, as long as I do what's in my control, I can
Mhm.
be happy with the situation. I can be, joyous or fulfilled or whatever. Whereas I think a lot of people that are on a different end of that spectrum than me are like, okay, well, it's not about what I do and what I can control. It's about end result. And so the only way that I'm going to find joy or happiness in this is if I get the end result that I want. I feel like that's a much more difficult thing to manage.
It's funny that you said that because literally when
I'm
we,
talking about you.
yeah, I was going to use those two words and I was going to frame it like completely different. Like, where to me, all of the bullshit is worth it for the end result. And as long as I get there, that is what like fuels me, right? And so like for me, and maybe it's just having like a baseline, knowing that like I have severe anxiety and like it's just something that hangs out with me like the vast majority of my day, and then just learning to navigate that. For me, it's having things that I'm working towards at the end result. Because my clients I say this all the time with them, like it's about racking up the little wins and finding those and then capitalizing on them. That's why if you follow me on Instagram, I make like my little lists and stuff, because not only does like typing it out help me remember everything I'm inevitably going to forget, but I get so much joy from crossing things off and like getting things done and being like, fuck yeah, I did it. And that's where like what I've been able to turn that into when we flip it to like the fitness thing, because for me, like specifically running is like a big outlet for me, and it's also something that's like, I mean, if anyone has done like endurance runs, they know that like at some point you get into like a bizarre like meditative state where I can have, especially like in a marathon or something, miles will go by where I'm definitely there doing it. And I'll be like, oh shit, when did that happen? How did I get here? Like, I don't even remember the last 3 miles because you get like so into just like the rhythmic pounding or whatever. It's the same motion over and you're just going in one direction. But like
Giggity.
all of that stuff, like for me, brings me comfort. And I mean, this probably comes to the productivity and then loops back to before we started recording, where Steven told me I should work on my stress, um, all of that kind of stuff. And being able to rack those up, like for me, helps me feel like a good day had happened. I was productive. I was there. I showed up. And so finding the easy joys is something that, is harder for me to do without having like planned something, or have like an event that we're doing or something like that.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I think it is important to remember that to get joy, it doesn't always have to be so difficult to get to joy. I think, but if we've lived that way and we were raised that way, or that's what was kind of modeled to us,
Mm-hmm.
then that becomes like what is normal to us and how we operate the world that we live in is, oh, in order to feel that sensation, I better work hard to get there, or there has to be something I must accomplish prior to feeling that joy.
But
And
what's the difference between fulfillment and joy then? Because like I think a lot
Yeah.
of times we put them together,
I
but
think
like
they're
if I have
different.
to work to get there, wouldn't that normally be more of a fulfillment than a joy?
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
I think you can feel joy in fulfillment.
Of course, for sure. But I mean,
But I
are
think
they?
you can feel fulfillment without joy.
I think you absolutely could feel
Yeah.
fulfillment without joy.
So I mean, I know that technically we pair them together, but do they have to be paired together?
No, I
I
think
don't
there's
think so.
different flavors of, or like, I don't know, because I feel like you can ride a fulfillment wave. For me personally, I think fulfillment is easier for me to create and stay on and like stuff because I know how to do that. I think joy is harder to know how to create, which is why, so on Insta, when we talked about this topic, I kept seeing on like social media and stuff, this discussion of like dopamine menus and like reels. And it sounded really silly to me. And so I didn't fall like down that rabbit hole. And then I finally gave into it and looked up like examples of them recently. And of course, it's something that speaks to me so well because it's literally having like a menu and a list. And what I loved is the like example that I had sent in our text thread. Um, I loved how that one broke down like snacks and full on like entrees or appetizers or like the big things. And so it doesn't always have to be something huge, but like little things like that can help me if I'm in a place where it's very much not easy to find joy, then having something where I can go to it. And like, for example, it's been cold here in Colorado. And I mean, I'm essentially a house plant mixed with a puppy. Like I have to get outside and have sunshine and I have to run. And I have not been going outside. I literally sit here in my office with a space heater underneath my desk running the entire time. And so I'm always cold. I hate being outside when it's cold. Like the wind, oh, hate it. So I have not been getting outside like nearly as much as I need to. I'm running from like my car to a place and back. And I've been lazy about that. And so I know I'm creating my own like trouble there. And then because little things like that, if I get it done, even though it's hard or like something, I get fulfillment on it, that also helps fill my joy jar. And so then I can it's like a big like full circle for me. But usually it's the fulfillment thing that has to come first before it can then like upgrade itself to joy, if that makes sense at all.
That's- do you guys? Because so for me, I don't think it was until like a few years ago that I was like, I would say I actually felt more happiness and stuff, and I was just like,
Is that just
everything's just kind of across the board, right? There's no real emotional response unless it's like I'm frustrated or angry at something. But I feel like most people, joy is almost unexpected and a surprise.
yeah.
It's like something good happening that you weren't necessarily expecting. And that's what like makes it so good. Like, oh, hey, I walked out and like, oh, wow, look at the sunset. It's just absolutely gorgeous. I didn't expect that. Like it's a little spark of joy, or oh, hey, look, babe, I got you flowers today just because it's it's Saturday. There's joy there. It wasn't something that was expected, but it was something that was still thoughtful and nice and like brought positive feelings to the day. Whereas I feel like I don't know that I guess like my ski trips, I experience joy. I guess I plan that, but I think most of the time when I experience joy, it's not something that's necessarily planned. It's just like kind of something organic that happens in a situation. I don't know if you guys feel the same way about it.
Well,
Yeah.
I feel like joy should be experienced throughout your day, irregardless if it's like sporadic or planned or like, and maybe that's where people fall off is that we
Don't.
don't really know how to see those little tiny things. So like I've had to learn this. It wasn't something that came easy to me. I can be pretty negative where my husband is like this like walking unicorn um with sparkles just flying everywhere. So I think that being able to experience joy in little things like when my kids are giggling. Like when they're playing together and I hear them giggle, then I'm like, I love that. Or my puppy, like I come home and she's so excited to come and run and see me, and like that's joyful for me. Like I feel a sense of happiness. Or randomly, my 5-year-old has been being like, "Hey mom, I love you." It's great. Like that fills my heart so much. So I think that that should happen throughout the day. And maybe it's like the degree of joy that we feel, like those little tiny like hits are really nice. And then maybe the surprises are like a whole kind of like your dopamine menu. Maybe that's like a big dinner entree. And then those little snacks are really nice throughout the day too. But not losing sight of the snacks is really important.
Yeah, because I mean, for the most part, Stephen, I was like tracking with everything there, but then I think about like one of the things that I can count on to help me with joy like each day is my morning routine and like waking up before everyone else. And I was even trying to explain this to Vic. And then, when it's like your person and you're trying to be like, hi, you're interrupting my thing. And you don't want to be like rude about it. But for him, he likes to wake up and while he's drinking coffee, like immediately, he likes to turn on First Things First and watch like sports news and stuff. And I enjoy that show. I enjoy the people on there. I enjoy listening about football and basketball and like things like that, but they argue with each other, whether or not they're being funny or they're like actually frustrated with each other. It's just a lot of energy immediately. They're on the East Coast. So like, or I guess we watch it recorded, but like it's just so much. And that instantly I'm like, it feels the same as if all the kids wake up at the same time and they're all running and asking me for snacks. And so I know that if I want to start off my day feeling ready, like with a smile, ready to go. I've had my time to set up. I'm awake before everyone, and I'm sitting there specifically with Indiana at my feet. The fire's turned on. I've got my coffee, and it's silent. And I can just like work up. And as long as I even get like 10 to 15 minutes of that, I'm good and I'm ready for the day. That gets interrupted, and or like if I dare, like I don't sleep in because that stresses me out more than just waking up. Because if I wake up after my kids and I'm going downstairs and those fools have been running around the house unsupervised on their own, it's just, you're instantly like, oh God, what am I about to walk into? And so I talk to a lot of people where the idea of waking up before their kids, I shoot for about an hour of time by myself. That means I have to go to bed early. And so they're like, that's the thing they don't want to do, right? Like, oh, well, that's going to ruin something like this or that. And it's been something where I have to put effort into it and get it done. But that truly, I can sit there and be like, oh, I'm so like cozy and happy and like sets my day off really well.
I feel like that's essentially the appetizer though, like of like a quick
My
meditation for,
starter.
but it's not quick, right? Especially like when you have a lot of things that take up your bandwidth and that take up mental stimulation all the time, taking care of kids, animals, all the rest of the things that have to get done, work, school, yada yada. Like sometimes that joy is just having bandwidth to spare, not having to look at all the other stuff. and being able to say, okay, well, I'm going to take a step back. And I think this is something that gets lost in, our society. By and far, it's like do more, do more, do more. And I was like, no, I think that's bullshit. I think the idea is do the amount that you feel is right that still allows you to have time for the things that make life, enjoyable. And I think it's one of the best ways to start the day, honestly, to be more productive is with something like a stress management technique or a meditation that's intentional. So whether, whatever that is for you, whether it's, sitting down, watching the snowfall with the coffee and the peace and quiet, whether it's doing breath work, whether it's, reading something, because it helps you to start the day off at a lower level of stress, which means that you can manage that throughout the day, which also means that, okay, the higher that stress gets on the threshold, the more apt you're going to be to have negative opinions and thoughts on things, to have negative expectations, to have negative reactions, and to be more reactionary. The lower that that is on the threshold, the more that you're going to be proactive throughout the day in creating good things, good experiences, good outcomes. And so I think it's something that a lot of people don't actually utilize, but really does create a ton of extra benefit in terms of just, it's kind of like the same idea of, okay, when you get, if you don't work at home, you stop down the street at the corner for 5 minutes before you go in home to your family to reset and say, okay, work is done. I need to leave that stuff there. It's family mode, right? I need to put myself into a place mentally where I'm ready to be the person I want to be at home and with my family. And so now I'm not bringing in things from outside that are going to create more negative experiences and take away from the ability to find joy in those things. And I'm going to go into that in a more productive, beneficial mindset to support those things, like those positive outcomes.
Danica, you look deep in thought.
I know. I love that. I agree. I have my clients do a body scan, and maybe I would say the first question would be to
You mean
find
like a DEXA?
like a DEXA. Yep.
Super
Um,
stress management.
it probably is. For me, it would
Just
be.
laying there.
But first, I would say for people to find what brings them joy, not in like just the bigger sense,
Huge.
right? Like not the bigger sense, but the small, tiny things that also bring us peace or that feeling of lightness, or you're able to actually inhale pretty deeply and exhale long, and what kind of sets the tone for you to be more productive or show up as your best self, right? So find the joy that you experience and how you experience that. But body scanning is really important too when you go from different places. So say you're coming from you could go work to gym to house, right? So each one, you want to make sure that you are pausing, scanning your body. What feelings and emotions and energy are you taking into the next thing that you're about to go into? And so that gives you that moment to kind of check yourself. And is this the energy that I want to bring into the next thing?
Yeah, I like that. Actually, I think when I was doing my most meditation, I was using the Calm app, and they would have a lot of guided meditations where they had body scanning built into it, kind of. So, you would sort of get into your rhythm, you'd start your breathing, you'd start, doing that, and then like, okay, pay attention to your traps and your neck. Pay attention to your head and, your temples. Breathe into that. Relax that. Try and let that, that tightness go. And you'd go through different parts of your body as well. And so they kind of, depending on what you're looking at and where you go to, if you want just a resource, there are things like that out there that will kind of take you through a blend of maybe it's meditation or progressive relaxation or body scanning or whatever it might be, so that you can kind of get introduced to getting a little bit of practice with that stuff too.
Yeah.
'Cause I feel like a lot of people, and unless you've practiced and you've done it for a while, like you don't know. A lot of us don't know what the fuck we're feeling. You know, we're like, oh yeah, no, I totally feel like this, and you're like, yeah, I'm super calm, and somebody just cut you off, and you're gripping the steering wheel, and everything, your hands and knuckles are white, and you're
Shoulders
like,
are up
I'm not
here.
stressed out at all. Your shoulders are up here because your traps are tight all the time, and you're just like carrying all this stress. You're like, no, I feel great.
Yeah. I did I had this hypnobirthing download that I had found like before having Riker and stuff and preparing for labor and stuff. And I literally go back there's like different versions of it. And somehow I found the Australian version. And so it's this lovely Australian woman named Catherine Clark. And I think I got it off of like iTunes back in the day, and still have it. And the one that I remember the first time I got introduced to it, I kind of like bristled and thought it was like weird, but I go back to it so much and it works so well for me. And you're supposed to like lay down and get comfortable and everything like that. And then you think about yourself walking through a rainbow, which sounds so silly, but walking through each color once at a time and feeling it like wash over you, that color. What does that make you pay attention to? What instantly comes to mind? And you just acknowledge it. And then you walk into the next color. And so it would like guide you through Roy G. Biv. And like by the end of it, I would feel so good. And I mean, I would literally have these feelings of like warmth as I walked through, you know, like the yellows, oranges, and reds, and like feel myself relax and things like that, or feel calmer during the blues. Who knows what green made me feel. But you know, like going through that stuff would serve so well because I'm somebody where if I have to do like, well, we talked about this before we started recording. If I'm not like ready for that, and then somebody asks me to do like a body scan, I will, as soon as I get to something that's like not relaxed or is a little bit weird, I'll hyperfixate. And then like, I'm just focusing on that and nothing's relaxing. It's just, why does my breathing feel so funny? Like that's one where if I have to focus on my breath, like it can take me the opposite direction, because then I'm thinking like, is my rib cage expanding too much? Is it supposed to do like, I start thinking about all the things. And so sometimes having that other stuff where like, it was the same thing. The way you would think about walking through the rainbow is like the color hits your head first and then it's like washing over your body. But for some reason, thinking of the color doing it to me as opposed to just me going through my body was easier for me to like accept it and let it happen and be like, this is nice. So if you haven't found like the meditation tactic or like whatever that is that works for you, the beautiful thing is that now there's so many and there's so much stuff out there. And so you got to just find like the right person if you're listening to something, or like the right technique, because it is huge and got me through labor.
Cannot relate.
No, you can't. If only you could.
Nah, I'm all right.
Like Arnold Schwarzenegger
Mhm.
Jr., right?
I'm waiting for Danica
Yeah.
to say something.
Okay.
She's just sitting there
Well,
smiling at us.
I feel like she keeps taking notes, and it's like
I
when
do
you're
take
in a
notes.
therapy session or whatever, and they take notes, but they don't say anything. And she's sitting there listening to us, and then she goes all quiet and thoughtful while she's taking notes down.
I feel like she's just taking our jokes. Like she's definitely written down pigeon pals so that she can use that later.
She's
Well,
like, come on, Matt.
no. Yeah, I think it's just so important to find what works best for you. And also at the root of it, find out what brings you that calming through. It can even be through beautiful chaos, like what can bring you to feel on more solid ground. And it could also be a person, right? Like I strongly believe in like the transfer of energy when we're holding somebody that might be a little more calm in a situation. And if you just kind of hold them or they hold you or whatever, I believe in that too. So it could be talking to somebody. It could be just finding the thing that's going to help you to experience that joy. But your first task would be to, what is joy to you? And how do you experience joy? And not what is joy to other people. That's not what I'm talking about, because it's going to be different for everybody. So not being like, well, my husband does this, or my fiance does this, my mother-in-law does this. That might not be your thing. So really do some work and ask yourself, like, when was the last time that I felt like good, like in good harmony, and who was around
Dangerous
me?
question, Danica.
What?
Dangerous question for some.
But I think that that's an important question. I ask that question to most all of my mindset clients. When was the last time that you felt really on solid ground physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And for me to have a good understanding of like what is the duration of time that you haven't been experiencing that lightheartedness is one, but then also I want to remind them that like you're capable of feeling that, like you did feel that, and that feeling is something that doesn't just go away as the years go by. I think sometimes we stuff it down or we don't know how to seek it out because we get so busy or so bombarded with negative bullshit that we forget that it's like just it's really chilling, waiting for us to kind of tap it.
Well, I mean, like,
Effort.
I feel like also a lot of people, and this kind of goes to like the social media dopamine hit stuff that I was talking about, what was it, a few weeks ago now, I guess. Like there is so much that's fed to us externally about how we're supposed to feel, or how we're supposed to feel joy, or the things that we're supposed to have, or what our lifestyle is supposed to look like, or this or that. And I think it plays into like the idea of basic human needs that we have, like some of which being social acceptance and mastery and yada yada whatever, that a lot of times we get really caught up on seeing how we don't measure up to this kind of idea or persona or life that's put out there. That's most of the time absolute bullshit, or just like these little snippets of what life actually is. That that can be something that kills joy a lot of the time too, because instead of feeling that happiness and joyous kind of experience, we maybe feel it for just a moment and then we're like, oh yeah, but it's not good enough. Or, oh yeah, it doesn't actually measure up. Or, yeah, but my mom always tells me my brother's doing better at this than me. It has one of those kind of negative connotations to it, almost like we start to feel it and then we kick ourselves in the ass.
Right.
There's a
Yeah.
really good it's a I guess a meme maybe, but it's like a little kid who is jumping through a puddle and like has this huge smile and she's like her arms are up in the air, and I think it says like it's a girl, but it says remember her, she's still there. And it always reminds me that, we can still be childlike in nature when it comes to the joy that we can experience, and to try to remember not to suffocate ourselves with all the negative stuff, because at the end of the day it probably doesn't matter as much as we think it does, and to just go back to our roots or go back to the place where we were able to jump through puddles and have a good time.
Yeah, because they're not thinking about it as much, right? Like kids can up to a certain point in their
Yeah.
intellectual development just take the world as it is, and like they're going to focus on the good stuff that feels good and like gravitate towards that, which is why they're so good at the word no immediately, and they'll stand like, oh my gosh, there's nobody like I aspire to be like my 2-year old, and the strength of the way that little woman says no when she's not doing something, and she will like square off her shoulders like to her brothers if they tell her to do something, and she's like, no, I don't want to. And I'm like, damn right, girl. Like it's annoying right now, but I'm really proud of you for being able to do this. And I hope you can do it later in life. And it's the thinking, right? It's like the same reason that kids will be fearless up until a certain point where like nothing scares them. They're jumping off the things. They trust you're going to catch them and things like that. And then all of a sudden, something changes where they start being able to think about going back to the beginning of our conversation. They can stand at the top of the playground and be like, but if you don't catch me, I'm going to go through your arms, hit the ground. That's going to hurt. I don't like that. And then they're like, no, I don't want to do anything. And it can seem like this like immediate thing. And it really comes back. I mean, it's like a good sign on one hand because they can think all of these things through. But I think trying to find a place where we're not we're not thinking everything through so much. Like I know for me, that's a big thing, trying to pull that back.
So I feel like that's part of natural human behavior though. Because like we talked about it before, like your brain can only process a finite number of things at a time. So really what it's doing for most things is it's making associations based on prior experience and bias. And so you're making assumptions like, okay, well, until I know that somebody can fall off of something high and get hurt, it's never going to be a thought. But once I start having that, and it happens a couple times, now my brain can start making that association every time I'm somewhere higher or every time I'm doing something dangerous. If I haven't had a lot of painful experiences, then that's not really deeply ingrained in the bias that, my neural activity is going to go to in
Right.
certain experiences. But if once I start having more of that now, okay, that's something that I'm going to think of. And I think that as adults, not as kids, but as adults, is something to be aware of and saying, okay, well, where are my biases, and how are those impacting my ability to have joy and fulfillment? Are they keeping me from doing things that I enjoy doing or things that I feel like would add a lot of value to my life? And are they realistic? Yes or no? Great. And can I still do the things that I want to do, or the choice, make those choices, regardless of whether that's a yes or no? And try and rewire that initial go-to response. 'Cause I feel like that's what happens. And for a lot of people is we have that initial emotional response, that initial go-to response. And then that's what we kind of let fly instead of saying, okay, I had that initial response. Now I can take a step back, say, and start thinking about it a little bit more objectively, and then pick that apart of, okay, how do I start addressing this in a way that's actually beneficial for how I respond to these things? And maybe it's not natural or comfortable, at least particularly initially, but that end result, maybe the carrot on the stick is worth it, right? Maybe for like you, it gives you that end result that you wanted. And now, the more that you do that and reinforce that, the more that there can be more positive associations with the things that come before that.
Yeah, it's almost like exploring your belief systems too, right? Exploring your belief systems. Is this belief that I have or narrative that I'm going through, is it serving me well, or is it limiting my ability to like experience joy or happiness or fulfillment or whatever it is? And taking that pause moment instead of being like feeling action, like you can have a feeling and then explore that thought a little bit more in the middle to make sure that that belief aligns with what you actually want to do, or it may not. And then you can create a new belief, right? Like then that's where we're able to do that. I also think, do you guys watch Ted Lasso?
Yeah.
Hell yes.
I also think we all should be goldfish.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Ooh, did I talk about shark energy last?
No.
Okay. So,
No. What? Shark
I'm
energy?
literally like, for Christmas, I want to go, and my present to myself is going to be a little shark tattoo. And I was doing one of my Peloton runs. Actually, I think it was the morning of Thanksgiving where I was like, I gotta go do this. Because for me, holidays as a kid for me were fucking chaos. It meant we had to drive from San Diego up to Orange County to go see our giant extended family. People were definitely going to argue. Someone's outfit was going to get picked on. It was going to be like fucking crazy. And so I was just never a huge fan. And for whatever reason, still at 37, I like guard myself thinking it's going to go that way, even though my husband's family is the exact opposite. At one point, we were playing 4 different board games at the same time at the same table. And I was like, wow, these people are really good at distraction as a way of keeping the energy high. And it's when you were explaining all of that, Danica, like different what you do, where you're like, no, we're going to do the energy this way. I was like, oh my God, that's what Carrie was doing. And that's why we were playing 4 different games at one time. Because I sat there like, why are we doing this? Nobody's focusing on this game. Does anyone know who's winning? Like with that stuff. But so I was doing this Peloton workout, and I think it was, if people do Peloton, Selena Samuela, I think was her name. And she was talking about how she has been a surfer her entire life. And she's like, if you surf, you are inevitably going to be in water with sharks at some point. Like it's just going to happen if you're spending that much time in the ocean. And so she said at one point she was out there and she's doing her own thing, like looking out at the horizon. And then she turns and realizes that everybody is quickly, one by one, leaving the water and going to stand on the shoreline. And so she starts looking a little bit more and realizes there's a giant fin, just kind of lazily doing its own thing. And she's like, here's this shark who just wants to be around the waves and like hang out just like everybody else does. It wasn't bothering anybody, it wasn't even near anybody. But everybody else was like, ew, I don't like this, and ran away and let it ruin their experience. But the shark didn't give a fuck about what everybody else was doing. The shark just had shark energy of like, I'm just swimming around, living my best life, doing what I need to do to make the shark feel good. And we all need a little bit of shark energy. And for whatever reason, I heard that and was like, oh my God. Like that spoke to me so well because like one of the things that I'm like constantly and consciously anxious about is like how my impact on moods around me, or like did I say something stupid? Did I do that? Like whatever. And so I'll sit and think it over and I was like, oh my God, if anybody needs to adopt shark energy and just be like, I'm just going to be authentically Christina and do what brings me joy and that kind of stuff. And if other people don't like it, they can go to the shore, but I'm going to do what I want to do. And like, so that was huge for me. So I don't know if that helps anybody else, but like, I have not stopped talking about shark energy since I fucking heard about it.
I love that. I love that. I think everybody should also be their own cheerleader and like hype girl and guy. They should.
That's why I put on my little skirt all the time. Get my pom-poms out. Go, Steven.
You gotta hype yourself up sometime and like make yourself feel joy in in the beautiful chaos that we call life.
Yes, I mean, so shark energy it's like I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck, you know? Um
That's
like it's authentic. It's just being authentic. Uh, and this is where I think like kind of that social aspect of things gets in the way of us experiencing joy is because we expect that everybody, like, why the fuck do we have this expectation that everybody should like us? No, everybody should not like me. If everybody likes me, that means I'm telling people only what they want to hear. I'm doing, and one, it's impossible to even think that I would have an idea of what everybody wants to hear and what's going to feel right. Like, nope. But you shouldn't be for everybody. Like, let your vibe attract the tribe, like, let that happen because it's so much more fulfilling to have relationships and interactions where you can be yourself and be welcomed for who you are, not feel like you have to shunt stuff down or mask or do things differently to make other people happy.
Right.
Like, the idea of shark, I was like, well, those people are probably smart for getting out of the water. But like, yeah, you probably are. I don't need to start a fight with Nate Diaz. I'm gonna get my ass beat, right? I'm gonna take a step back. Like, let's be real. Um, but at the same point, that doesn't mean that I shouldn't be who I am. Like, all right, man, cool. Like maybe me and Nate just ain't gonna be boys. I don't know. I've never met him. He seems pretty chill. But like, you know what I mean? Like maybe we're just not meant to be besties, and that's okay. Like we're not gonna be running into each other all the time. And I think oftentimes we steal our own joy or we prevent ourselves from having joy because we're too busy trying to make a bunch of people who honestly we probably don't even fucking like that much
right.
have some semblance of approval on our lives or want to be our friends for some reason. We're like, why do I care so much what this person thinks
Mhm.
when like I don't even like them?
Yeah. And I mean, social media definitely doesn't do us any favors in that sense because we have the opportunity to share so much or take in other people's like sharing so much. And so, like, I mean, it can just have so much of an influence. Right. Man, what a big episode, guys. I didn't anticipate today being so, I don't know, the way it was. Like
I like it. Joy.
Stephen
Well, I
Glitch.
hated it. It brought me no joy.
Good for you.
I love that for you, Steven.
I love that for you. That's not my journey, but you can take it.
I love that. I need to say that to more people.
I stole it from someone. I stole it from DJ. Essentially, she was like, "I love that for you." And at first, I was like, "Are you talking down to me?" I was like, "Or is it just because you don't like that, but you're glad that I like it?" And it
Right.
took me like a while before I was able to like understand that appropriately, I think. I was like, "I feel like you're insulting me." And I was like, "All right, cool. I'm glad that you're happy for me." I'm like, you don't have to understand it, but right on.
Yeah.
It's just a twofold thing to say. And when you're saying it, it can be either one. And then it's up to the other person to absorb it.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how all interaction is anyways, right? You can say whatever you want. Somebody will take it however they're going to take it anyways. They're going to how you save it and your intention and their perception are two completely different things that might not ever meet in the middle.
Word, word. Well, let's see. So today's the 4th. So this will go out next week. I have, as the challenge director, have to do a little PSA that we have a fun little group. Ooh, actually, it kind of ties into this a little bit because my goal for our new group that we're doing, this is the first time we tried one of these, but I've wanted to do it for a little over a year now. So we're doing it's Slay the Holidays. And the idea is literally just having a support system to just feel like you're staying on board with the things that are important to you, with your goals and your habits and things like that between now and like mid-February is when this one's going to end. So kind of carrying us through Christmas, New Year's, and then getting us past like January, where, if we set big goals, I think it's like January 20th or 21st is like quitting day, where it's like known that 3 weeks into people's resolutions, they're usually done by quitting day. And so it's going to get us past that. And it's not a challenge in the sense that like we're not rewarding anybody for having lost weight or changed their body or like anything that's related to transformation. Like that's not the focus of it. I really wanted to try and have a group where all we focused on was like keeping things up or like feeling good in what we're doing instead of feeling like it constantly has to change. We have to push harder and things like that. And so that starts by the time you guys hear this, we'll be a couple days into it. It's going to open up on December 9th, and it's going to be exclusively a Facebook group is where we're hosting it. We're going to have the Facebook lives that we always have in the other challenge groups with our coaches. And so they're still going to be popping in. And like I said, the idea is that the conversations are geared more towards trying to hold steady, which I mean, I've said as we talked about this joy thing, like for me, a lot of the times joy is at a finish line, no matter what it is. Like I like to have something that I'm chasing and that's fulfilling for me, but it's a skill that I think we should all learn how to work on when like everything else in life gets crazy and we just need to stay afloat, being able to do that without having to put too much pressure on ourselves or switch things up all the time. I think it works for our monkey brain and needing to be like, no, you just have to sit still and like learn how to do this. And one thing I get nervous about with the challenges, because I had pushed to try and squeeze a third one in this year. But what I don't want it to be is that people feel like they constantly need to be dieting for 9 out of 12 months per year. Like we do 3-month challenges. And then because I'm in the groups, I do constantly see like the names that maybe pop up like routinely. And there are a lot of people who are super responsible about it and they join simply because they enjoy the community and not like they don't go into it saying, okay, I'll diet again. Like they say they're going to maintain. But I think this is going to be really exciting for like the people I've seen already talking about it, where they don't know what reverse dieting means. They don't know how to maintain and not feel like they have to switch things up. So by the time you guys hear this on Thursday, the 11th, it'll still be open. It's $39 to join, and you'll have all those weekly Facebook Lives. It's either 8 or 9 weeks long, I forget, but it goes December 9th to February 7th. And they're the download library. That's what I was trying to get out of my mouth. You get access to all of our training downloads. I think we're up to like 65 plus programs in there. We've got something like 40 different meal plans, menus, recipes, all of that kind of stuff. And so that alone is more than valuable because you can go in there and download every single thing that we have if you want to and just save it there and be good on training programs for the next many years. They vary between 2 days per week up to, I don't think we have 6 days per week, but it goes up to 5 and focuses on all different stuff. So there's my little PSA for our new group. You can find it at challenge.prophysique.com. Ta-da!
Bonk.
You guys got any other closing words for us?
I'm excited to not record on Christmas.
Is Christmas a Thursday or Wednesday?
Yeah, the 25th is a Wednesday.
No, we gotta
Good grief.
reschedule that.
You're just waiting for the day of not recording.
3 weeks.
Right. Until I
Wait,
send them an
not.
email where I'm like, hi guys, when do you want to record since we won't be recording on Christmas?
It brings me joy. Just re-release an old one. Nobody will know. Nobody listens to us that long anyways.
Right.
Yes,
I'll
they
have to
do.
find one. So if you do listen and you're still here, you should go put in the comments, haha, Steven, I'm still here. And then I'll take a screenshot and send it all to him. So all right, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us. And I hope that this brought you joy listening to it. And that you go find something else that's like a little joyful snack for the day.
I like it.
Christmas tree cakes. Little Debbie, let's go.
For real.